In 1977, NASA launched 2 spacecraft toward the outer solar system with no solar panels, no batteries, no fuel, and no moving parts of any kind. Just 2 chunks of metal with a temperature difference between them. That temperature difference has been generating electricity continuously for nearly 50 years. As of today, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are still transmitting data from beyond the edge of the solar system on the same physics a German physicist figured out in 1821. You can replicate that principle for $15 from parts on Amazon right now. And if you own a wood stove, a campfire, or any source of heat you are already producing and completely wasting, this video is going to change how you think about energy for the rest of your life. Let us start with the physics, because understanding it is what makes everything else make sense. The principle is called the Seebeck effect. Thomas Seebeck discovered it in 1821. When 2 different conductive materials are joined at a junction and one side of that junction is hot while the other side is cold, a voltage appears. No chemical reaction, no combustion, no moving parts. Just a temperature difference on 2 sides of a material, and electricity flows. The larger the gap between the hot side and the cold side, the more voltage you generate. That is the entire principle. Seebeck published it, the physics community understood it, and for roughly 100 years, it sat largely unused because cheap electricity from burning coal was simply easier to scale. Then 2 things happened that pulled it back into serious application. The Soviet Union needed to power over 1,000 unmanned lighthouses and navigation beacons along the Arctic coast. There was no electrical grid, no one around to refuel anything, and no practical alternative. They built thermoelectric generators using the Seebeck effect with a radioactive heat source. Set them, left them, came back years later. More than 1,000 of these devices were deployed by the late 1980s across some of the most remote terrain on Earth. Then NASA needed to power spacecraft traveling so far from the sun that solar panels become useless. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 each carried 3 thermoelectric generators producing 470 watts at launch. Nearly 50 years later, they are still running at around 220 watts each. 0 moving parts, 0 maintenance, a temperature difference, and the same physics Seebeck wrote down 2 centuries ago. So why has nobody told you about this? Because in the 20th century, utility companies built a grid. The grid was convenient. Cheap electricity made personal power generation feel unnecessary, and the thermoelectric effect got kept alive inside NASA programs and military applications without ever making it to your hardware store. Not because it does not work, because there is no financial incentive for anyone to tell you that a $15 module sitting on your wood stove generates electricity from heat you are already producing and currently throwing away into the air above your chimney. The U.S. Energy Information Administration puts the average American household electricity cost at around 16 cents per kilowatt hour. The actual cost to generate that power is a small fraction of that number. That gap funds infrastructure you do not own and an industry with no reason to give you alternatives. Here is the build. The component is called a TEG module, which stands for thermoelectric generator. The most common and most accessible one for DIY use is designated the TXE1 12706. It costs about $8 on Amazon or AliExpress. It is a small ceramic and metal tile roughly the size of a large postage stamp and about as thick as 4 credit cards stacked together. Inside are 127 pairs of semiconductor elements, made from bismuth telluride, the same material family Seebeck was experimenting with 200 years ago. Hot side faces down onto the heat source, cold side faces up. Temperature difference between the 2 faces generates voltage. At a temperature difference of around 60 degrees Celsius between the 2 faces, which a typical wood stove surface achieves without any effort, the module produces approximately 3 volts. That is not quite enough to charge a phone directly on its own, so you add one more component, a DC to DC USB voltage booster. These cost about $5. The booster takes that lower raw voltage from the module and steps it up to a clean, stable 5-volt USB output. Connect the module to the booster, plug your phone cable into the booster, and you are charging your phone from firewood. The stove was already burning. You were already losing every joule of that surface heat to the air around it. Total cost, $15. To get the best performance out of your setup, apply a thin layer of thermal paste between the TEG module and the stove surface when you place it. Thermal paste is the same material used between a computer processor and its cooling system. It fills the microscopic air gaps between 2 surfaces and dramatically improves heat transfer from the stove into the hot face of the module. On the top of the module, attach a small aluminum heatsink to keep the cold face as cool as possible. The bigger the temperature gap between the two faces, the more electricity you generate, so your job is to maximize heat going in and maximize cooling coming out. A light and natural breeze across the heatsink makes a measurable difference in output. 2 or 3 modules wired together can charge a phone faster and simultaneously run a small LED light from the same heat source. If you want more practical knowledge like this, the kind of thing that makes you genuinely wonder why nobody made it obvious sooner, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell. Every week, we bring back something forgotten, something proven, and something that puts real capability back in your hands. Subscribe before the next one comes out. The wood stove is the most natural starting point, but it is only one entry into this technology. Here are several others that are completely buildable right now. For van life and overlanding, a TEG module mounted against the exhaust housing or firewall near the engine generates electricity anytime the vehicle is running. Heat that is currently going nowhere silently supplements your battery bank the entire time you drive. No additional wiring beyond connecting the module to a booster. No panels to angle at the sun. Nothing to maintain or adjust. For camping with a fire or camp stove, a single module and voltage booster fits in a jacket pocket. Set it on the edge of your camp stove or on a flat rock at the fire's edge, prop the heatsink side up for airflow, and you have a working phone charger running on whatever you are already cooking over. No battery pack to remember to charge before leaving home. No hunting for a clear solar angle on a shaded forest site. For remote hunting and fishing cabins that get used seasonally with a propane heater or wood stove, a $50 multi-module setup keeps radios, GPS units, and headlamps charged for an entire season without hauling batteries in or running a generator. The heat is already there. The fuel is already being burned. For sailboats and small power boats, a TEG array positioned near the diesel exhaust line generates supplemental power anytime the engine runs. Useful for keeping battery banks topped up on longer passages when solar input is limited by weather, season, or the shadow of your own rig moving across your panels throughout the day. And then there's one application that genuinely surprises most people, the compost pile. An active compost pile in full biological decomposition reaches internal temperatures between 55 and 70 degrees Celsius. The outer surface stays considerably cooler. That is a real harvestable temperature difference. A module placed at the interface with leads running to a small voltage booster can power a soil moisture sensor, a garden timer, or a small LED light from nothing but the biological heat of organic material breaking down. No burning, no fuel, no sunlight. Just biology doing what biology does, and you capturing the energy on the way past. One TEG module will not run your refrigerator or replace your utility bill, and there's no point pretending otherwise. What it does is make something visible that the energy industry has never had a reason to advertise. The waste heat you are already producing from equipment you already own, using physics that has been understood for 200 years, can be converted into usable electricity for $15. Once you understand how the principle works, you start seeing heat sources everywhere. A wood stove, a car engine, a compost pile, a campfire, an exhaust pipe, a propane heater. Every one of them is a power source you have been walking past without knowing it. The Voyager probes are currently more than 15 billion miles from Earth. They are still sending data home. They run on a temperature difference. The same physics Seebeck wrote down in 1821. You can build your first version before the end of the week. $15, 200 years of physics, and electricity from heat you are already throwing away. Build the first one this week and you will immediately see where the second one goes. The next video is already up. Go watch it now.